candidates can come forward to their seats. I want to remind everybody to turn off their cell phones at this time, please. Thank you for coming. I'm Pat Lynn. I'm chair of the Government Affairs Committee for the Chamber of Commerce, and we're happy to put this on for the candidates. We're going to go through some little rules and regulations first. There are some cards at the back. If you wish to ask a question, hold up your hand, and our 3 volunteers from each campaign will come and give you a card and a pencil. You can fill out your question, hold up your hand, and they will pick it up and take it to the back of the room. They will be going through these questions to see if they're appropriate to ask if we have time. So your question may not be asked because it's a duplication or it wasn't appropriate to ask at this time. And I'm going to ask for absolute silence through the entire debate. We need to have the media able to hear what's going on, and the candidates need to hear the questions, and they need to hear the timer. So we need no applause, no reaction whatsoever. Just be very, very quiet. Thank you. This is how we're going to start. We're going to start with opening statements from each candidate. They will have 2 minutes to give their opening statement. They will go in the order of a draw from the basket. Then we'll go through a series of 5 questions. They will be given in the order of the draw, starting with number 1 candidate for question 1, number 2 candidate for question 2, and so forth. They will have 60 seconds to reply to the question, and the other 2 will have 60 seconds for rebuttal. The closing statement will be 90 seconds per candidate. We'll have another draw for the closing statements. We're going to have to pass this microphone back and forth. Question number 1. Wabash County. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening, folks. My name is Brendan Mullen, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, Wabash County Chamber of Commerce, for putting this together. And it's great to be back in Wabash. I was here just a few nights ago at the chili cook-off, and it was a great time. So I do want to say thank you. My name is Brendan Mullen. I was born and raised South Bend boy. I've been a resident of Indiana for 30 years. I grew up in my father's lumberyard, moving sheetrock, doing deliveries, and understanding what it feels like to shower before work and after work. When I graduated Adams High School, I had a chance to serve our country, and I went on to the United States Military Academy at West Point. After playing 4 years of Army football and thrilling Army-Navy games, the War on Terror started. And I went off and served our country like many of you, many of your friends and family. And after Korea, and serving for President Bush and Dick Cheney in D.C., in Iraq, I came home and took advantage of the tools and leadership skills that West Point and Army instilled upon me and started a couple companies. providing advocacy for our Indiana Guard and Reserve soldiers and their families, making sure laws and rules that protect them are followed upon by the small and medium and large business owners. And I'm running for U.S. Congress because Washington's broken. It's not working for our families. It's not working for our friends. It's not working for our communities. Simply, we're squeezing air out of each other. And what we need is folks that don't have monopolies of good ideas on either side. It's a question of bringing the extraordinary obstacles and challenges that we have and move to the middle of the table and work together. If we can provide that, then we have a chance to reignite that American dream and lay up that ladder of opportunity for my kids, your kids and grandkids to chase and prosper. Thank you, and I look forward to having a wonderful open-out conversation this evening. Thank you very much.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you also to the Chamber and to our reporters that came from miles around, and for all of you that came tonight. I appreciate it. My name is Jackie Walorski. I am running for the 2nd District U.S. Congress. I'm running because Hoosiers know that Washington's broken. From the places that we've gone, from the tip of South Bend to many times in Wabash, Peru, in the southern part of this district, we have heard one consistent theme over the past several months. And the tens of thousands of miles that have been driven, and the tens of thousands of hands that have been shaken. And it's that Washington is broken. What we hear, what I've heard, is that people are up to here with partisanship, with gridlock, with things that haven't worked, with trying to spend our way out of an economic disaster, $16 trillion of debt, and many, many problems, very few solutions. I can tell you that what we've heard is that millions of people in this country are underpaid. They're underemployed. They're struggling to provide for their families. I hear from moms about going to the grocery store and how much the price of groceries have increased for a family of 4. I hear about the price of gas. More than anything else, I hear about the uncertainty that Washington has created and the difficulty in private sector being able to actually hire and expand the jobs that we desperately need in the state of Indiana. I can tell you that I'm optimistic about the future because what we've done in the state of Indiana can lead the nation. And I'm so proud to be a Hoosier. I'm proud to have had the opportunity to serve you for the past 6 years in the Indiana legislature. And let me just tell you what we've done and been able to do across the aisle, rolling up our sleeves and having an opportunity to actually do things for this state. We've gone from deficits to surpluses. We retained our AAA bond rating. We've been able to lead the nation in job creation. We've been able to post unbelievable numbers on job creation in this nation, and we have a bright future ahead of us. Thank you.
My name is Joe Ruiz. I have a little bit different of a place where I came from. I came from Mishawaka by way of the Fords, and I've been working with kids for the last 6 years in Mishawaka at the Family and Children's Center. A lot of people, they will call them the at-risk youth in our community. And, you know, that's the reason why I got into this race. I began to think that the decisions that are coming out of Washington and the gridlock and some of the other things that are taking place, I began to get the impression that we're all at risk. And so I come from the Libertarian Party. And what both of the people with me have just said is that there's too much partisanship and that Washington is broken. But I would challenge that it is Republicans and Democrats who have been in charge for a very long time, and this is the result that we've gotten from our two-party system. I'm here to provide an alternative. I'm here to provide a third choice for people who would seek that out, because I think having another option is vital in today's United States of America, in our current economic climate, and everything else that's going on in the United States. Again, my name is Joe Ruiz, and thank you so much for having me out tonight.
The first question goes to Jackie. Wabash County is a relatively small portion, population-wise, of your district. And as a county, we are somewhat different from your South Bend, Mishawaka, Elkhart urban area in that we are considered a rural area. How do you plan to engage Wabash County so that our voice is heard on important legislation regarding social education, crime, business, and other issues at the national level.
Thank you. My history in the state of Indiana has been such that I've represented rural St. Joe County or rural Elkhart County for 6 years in the state legislature. And the needs are vast in rural America. Number one issue that we've heard, and I heard for 6 years in the state of Indiana, was the need for jobs, the need to have a place to work, the need to have a place to engage. And I can tell you that with issues like Social Security, national defense, issues that you may not have felt represented in before, I will absolutely bring your voice to the table. Because I can tell you exactly what we have as a model in Washington is to do exactly what we've done in the state of Indiana, which is to get a handle on our spending, to ratchet back the debt, to audit every department, to make sure that we run lean and mean in the state of Indiana, and we really can't do that at the federal level as well. The needs of farmers, the needs of family farms being protected, repealing the death tax at the federal level, those are the kinds of things that we have to do for rural America. But more than anything else, I will make this promise to you with Social Security and with Medicare. I will not cut those programs, nor will I raise taxes on them.
Same question? Yeah. Okay. Well, the question actually encapsulates a lot, touches on a lot, and I think that some of the problems that we're talking about for people in Wabash are similar problems for everyone. I think that everything Jackie said in terms of auditing federal departments and making sure that job creation here is strong in Indiana, I think all that is fantastic. But I would challenge the remarks regarding Social Security and Medicare. She says, like she just said, and she said in her commercials, she won't touch those programs. But I think in terms of being a true fiscal conservative, we really need to take a look at future generations. Now, Libertarians believe in contracts and upholding contracts, and we do feel like contractually we are obligated to make sure that people who have been investing in these programs for a long time are going to be taken care of as far as those who are immediately utilizing these programs. However, for younger generations, like, say, people my age, we might want to opt out of those programs and save up for our own retirements or save up for our own care in the long run. And I think that government has shown itself to be a financially irresponsible institution. And I think that if people like me would like to take the opportunity to save for themselves, we should be able to.
Small town Wabash. We understand what we're dealing with because we're Main Street. Our friends and families, we grew up with each other. We went to school, we played high school football and soccer. Though you're down in Wabash and I'm from South Bend, it's all the same because we need to stay laser focused on taking care of small businesses, taking care of Main Street versus Wall Street. And right now the level playing field, guess what guys, it's not level. It's tilted towards big corporations, big insurance, and Wall Street. And what we need to stay focused on is focused at just 100 yards to my north, GDX. Used to employ 825 of our friends and neighbors here, but it was chopped up and sent overseas. It's unacceptable. We need to keep focus on Main Street, hometown tax credits, and not allowing for jobs to be sent overseas. Social Security. Let's stay focused on making sure that we keep it so that my 2-month-old daughter, Frankie, or my 2-year-old Lily has a chance to walk into retirement in a secure retirement moving forward. The only way to do it is with bipartisanship and moving to the middle of the table. Thank you.
The next question goes to Joe. It has been suggested that raising the full retirement age by 2 years would keep the Social Security Trust Fund solvent for many years. As we are now living longer and many are continuing to work into their 70s, is this a fix that you would support, or do you have another plan to keep Social Security solvent?
Excuse me. Well, in terms of keeping it solvent, I mean, I would support something like that in terms of a first step. But like I said, our government spends roughly $40,000 every second. And every year, we have consistently proposed increases in what we spend. And I really think that we have to talk about future generations. You know, I have a 3-year-old daughter, I have a 1-year-old son, and I'm not just concerned about my retirement, my wife's retirement, and our futures. I'm concerned about theirs, and I'm concerned about my unborn grandchildren. And what kind of climate are we setting for them? And so I think giving people the opportunity to take care of themselves, take personal responsibility, I think that's very American. And I think that it's great because not only does it benefit the individual, but it also benefits the federal government in their current economic crisis, and I think it would help us all out a ton.
Can you repeat it?
Yes. It has been suggested that raising the full retirement age by 2 years would keep the Social Security Trust Fund solvent for many years. As we are now living longer and many are continuing to work into their 70s, is this a fix you could support? Or do you have another plan to keep Social Security solvent?
Social Security, the blueprint for countries across the world that have used our model to take care of our vulnerable, our sick, our survivors, and our seniors. We need to make sure that we move it forward in a responsible and efficient way for every man, woman, and child moving forward. The privatization of Social Security, such as my opponent, Jackie Walorski, has championed upon, is unacceptable. The privatization of it and putting our nest egg that we worked and put into the New York Stock Exchange or into Wall Street is a gamble that I not only don't want to risk, but it's unacceptable for knowing full well what we just went through in the Great Recession. What we need to do is come to the middle of the table, put our sharpened pencils on the table, and work across the aisle in a bipartisan manner to chase down these obstacles so that my young daughter and our kids and grandkids can move into retirement and have a chance to use this extraordinary piece of legislation that is a blueprint for across the world.
Thank you. I believe this is another example of Washington being out of touch. We have partisan gridlock in Washington. I can tell you again, I will not vote to cut Social Security or Medicare. I've been very clear on that. I do believe that the solution and the way out of this is to have a bipartisan committee to unlock the gridlock in D.C. And the way we do that is to be accountable at places like this right now in a debate. To go on record when we have media sitting here saying, I will not vote to cut Social Security and Medicare. I think to be accountable and say that I will sit down at the table in a bipartisan group of people and put the partisan bickering aside and come up with a solution. And I can also tell you that my mom is sitting right here on the front row, and she just retired a couple of months ago, and I sat with her when she signed her life away to the U.S. government. And I will not watch the disintegration of these programs on my watch. It is my mama and her generation. All of us in here have moms and grandparents. It's the responsibility of our generation to take care of the generations of the past that built the country.
A recent issue of increasing importance is the practice of appointing czars to run various ad hoc federal efforts. Do you support this practice, or would you support legislation limiting or eliminating the practice?
The concept of putting an unelected person in charge of a large government bureaucracy is unacceptable. What we need to do is make sure that these different programs that are put in place are focused on our hometown folks, using people that are around the table on a day-to-day basis, whether it be small businesses or on Main Street, taking the lessons that we learn on a day-to-day basis and applying it to Washington. No longer can we focus on faceless bureaucrats that make decisions for us, whether it be from the Department of Transportation to the Department of Interior. We need to make sure that our voices are heard. And the only way to do so is having a steady and common sense voice in the halls of Congress representing us.
I'm all about decreasing the size of the federal government. I think the government's too big, it's overreaching, it's cost jobs, it's a job killer in the state of Indiana for sure. And I can tell you that what we did in the state of Indiana should be a model. It's good, common sense, Hoosier principles and practices. We audited every department in the state of Indiana and ratcheted back the size of our government back to the 1975 level, cut massive amounts of spending, and that's one of the ways we balanced our budget in this state.
Yes, I think that efficiency is priority number one in terms of our government. And I think that if we were to take an audit of majority of our federal departments, we would find that there is an enormous amount of waste. Czars being part of it. I think we could get rid of them, period.
What are your feelings regarding health care? Will you seek to continue with Obamacare, or will you seek to repeal? If you will repeal it, what are your plans to provide care for the uninsured, underinsured, and Medicare and Medicaid recipients?
Again, this is a problem in Washington with overreaching massive health care, mandatory purchase on the side of every single American. I have been consistent, and I'll tell you again here tonight, consistently in the corner of full repeal of Obamacare. I think it's for several reasons. First of all, it's a government takeover. There's a medical device tax inside of that massive bill that is a job killer in Indiana and Kosciuszko County, the orthopedic industry. Almost every county around here, it'll cost jobs as the folks that are transitioning and drive every day back and forth there. $39 billion out of our nursing home industry, over $700 billion out of Medicare, which we just talked about protecting. And I can tell you that my opponent supports this program. He's been on record supporting this program. And I will be the first to tell you tonight that I am all about jobs in this district and in the state of Indiana. And we simply cannot afford it. I think where we start is a bipartisan commission. We clean the table and we bring things to the table like tort reform, medical malpractice insurance, which we have the best in Indiana.
Again, all of those things sound fantastic, but the problem is, and yes, Obamacare should be repealed, but we need to take a look at what is the real issue here. The issue is, like Jackie stated, it's an overreach of government. However, I've heard voices from within the Republican Party who stands up and opposes Obamacare, saying something similar to the fact that they would love it to be repealed, but they want their own government option. And I think that that's more of the bureaucratic fighting across the aisles. I think that's something that a Libertarian candidate, a third-party candidate, would not allow. I think no government option, allowing free market solutions like buying insurance and selling insurance across state lines so that the price is naturally driven down for consumers, offers better health care options, and I don't think the government needs to be involved at all. And how great would it be if we could just go out and have our needs met in the community and not have to involve Uncle Sam?
First of all, I would like to make something very clear. My opponent just brought up the number 700 billion, and that's fuzzy math. That's straight from one of her friends, Paul Rowe, and the same fuzzy calculator that her friend Richard Murdoch uses. It doesn't add up. It's unacceptable for her to stand here in front of us and have disingenuous comments to suggest that while I do have a considerable amount of support for this bill, I have some extraordinary skepticism. I'm a small business owner. I create jobs. I balance budgets. I distribute 401k. And small businesses are getting hamstrung with this bill. Let's be very clear. The job creators in our community are small businesses and small business owners and entrepreneurs. We are getting hamstrung by this. Now that aside, my wife Suzanne and I have two gorgeous young daughters. They came out young and healthy and strong, but 17.6 million children, 17 million babies in our community across our country now are covered with a pre-existing condition that wasn't otherwise covered before this law. There's some extraordinarily good, there's some extraordinarily bad. We need to focus on repealing the bad pieces, keeping the good. Thank you very much.
The Congress seems to be in a deadlock situation during the past few years and therefore not able to accomplish many issues that are deemed important to Americans. Are you willing to reach across the aisle to your counterparts to work toward a successful compromise in these important issues?
Not only am I willing to reach across the aisle, I say create an entirely new aisle. Because as a third-party candidate, no, seriously, look at this. You've got the Republicans and the Democrats, and they can't agree on anything, and it's in the leadership. Because if, say, I agree with Jackie or I agree with Brendan, and we're all in the House of Representatives, you know, and if I'm a Republican, I have to worry about what my leadership is going to think of my tactics. And if I'm a Democrat, I have to worry about what my leadership is going to think of my tactics. As a Libertarian, I'm going to go in on day one and start looking to form coalitions on specific issues with both Republicans and Democrats, and hopefully some other Libertarians too. And that's where this gridlock ends. It's when we're willing to say no more of the same things that have been going on. I don't think that's going to happen with Republicans or Democrats. It's going to take a young, fresh voice like my own to go in there and make it happen.
Folks, this has been the fundamental question of the campaign minus jobs. Is it bipartisanship? How is it lacking? The halls of Congress are broken, and it's absolute gridlock. And I'd like to ask the voters here, and my friends in the audience, and the folks that we've yet to personally meet, to look at my opponent's record. She's had a 93% unity score voting with her Republican leadership when she was a state house rep. She said that she's the best bill killer the state of Indiana has ever seen. She also bragged that she's fighting an ideological war. Ladies and gentlemen, I've fought in a war, like many of you. I've tasted it, it smells bad, and it's not fun. What we need to do is come to the middle of the table, and ladies and gentlemen, I know full well we need to move 1 inch forward. Because if we continue to hire Tea Party Republicans or Nancy Pelosi Democrats, we will never effectively touch each other's fingers and move our country forward. We need bipartisanship that with a record that stands on its own. And I believe my military record, my business creation, stands on its own. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a great question. It is the product of Washington is gridlock. And since we're talking about friends, and I consider you all my friends in the room, we have to include that former Speaker Pelosi is a friend of Brendan Mullen's, and dropped $175,000 in his campaign last week with negative ads. So I guess if you have friends like that, then we're all friends. I consider everybody my friend. So I have a 75% voting record in the Indiana House. Every bill that passed the Indiana House, I had 75% of those bills I voted yes on had Democratic support. I can tell you when the economy crashed in the state of Indiana and the RV industry went from 5% unemployment to 25% overnight, every single House member and Senate member in Indiana, Republican and Democrat, we sat at a table together, we rolled up our sleeves, we did whatever we could to get jobs going again in Elkhart County. The same thing will happen at the federal level. You know, it's whether it came to tax incentives, whether it came to standing up and working together, even with the federal level, we did that as a team because we're Hoosiers and we believe in common sense solutions.
Is there time for a quick statement?
No.
No rebuttal?
We're going to go with closing statements.
No.
Keep going here.
No, we're having fun. Let's keep it simple.
Do you want a balanced budget? And if so, how do we cut spending without sending the economy into recession?
One more time?
Do you want a balanced budget? And if so, how do we cut spending without sending the economy into recession?
First and foremost, if we continue to send professional politicians to Washington, we're going to get what we have now, gridlock. What we need to do is make these folks that are our members of Congress, our high elected officials in the land, take responsibility, have accountability. And if they don't balance the budget, we need to cut their pay and freeze it. It's unacceptable for these clowns to continue to have a lot of money and not to take care of our communities. What we need to do is absolutely have a budget and make sure that it's balanced every year.
Thank you. I would like to be able to file that first bill in Congress, which is to have a balanced budget amendment. We did it in the state of Indiana. I voted for it. I can tell you this is not the time to raise taxes in this country. And when I ran for the Indiana State House, I knocked on 10,000 doors to become an Indiana State representative. I looked those people in the eye and told them I would not vote for a tax increase, that we could balance our budget without raising taxes, and we could do it by cutting spending. And I promise you the same thing in the halls of Congress. We have a spending problem in the United States Congress. We don't have a revenue problem. And when we do the things that we did in the state of Indiana, I cast these votes. I've worked across the aisle with my sleeves rolled up to make sure this happens. I know what it's like to stand and cast a tough vote when everybody comes after you for their special interest money. But I stand firm that we don't need to raise taxes. We need to shrink down the size of this government. We need to cut the excess and the fraud in the programs that are there, and we can stand proud in D.C. like we stand proud in Indiana that we can do this together. I'm optimistic about the future.
I absolutely support balancing the budget, and actually I would propose a balanced budget immediately upon being elected. I would also like to say that I support initiatives such as the fair tax, which would be minimizing the IRS to just about nothing, and instating instead a national consumption tax on all new goods and services. And I think that that would be a great illustration of how simpler government works better, because trusting the federal government to fix this economy, it's just not going to work. We can't agree on anything. We have to let the private sector take control, because that's where the money comes from. And let me just say, a great example of it, we were talking about the gridlock a little while ago, is you got Jackie gets the mic, and immediately she's on Brendan for being a friend to Nancy Pelosi. Like, really? This is what we're talking about. When we get to Washington, we need to work with people and not against people. And there's already people working against people right here at this table. So, who's setting the example? That's all I'm saying.
I am 64. I have pre-existing conditions. What should I expect if your party takes over the White House and Congress in November when I sign up for Medicare next July?
You can expect that Washington is going to do the same thing they've always done, which is, unless we change it, we're going to have an Obamacare program that is going to require $714 billion being taken out from the beginning from Medicare to pay for this program. And I can tell you that what I would propose in a failed system of Obamacare, which puts senior citizens in jeopardy, not only for your pre-existing condition, but because there's no money to pay for it, but there's $39 billion coming out of long-term care, and should you need long-term care at some time in your future, it will not be there. Why my opponent supports it, I have no idea, because it's a tax hike to small businesses, it's a job killer, and I just would like to say this, there's ways that we can reach across the aisle on Obamacare. It's going to require bipartisan folks to sit down together and clear the table and start over. And if there's pieces we want, we should bring them back. But we've got to have things in there like tort reform and medical malpractice policy, some of the best that we have in the state of Indiana. And I'd like to just remind you of this. There's going to be one vote on the House floor to repeal Obamacare. And I'm going to vote to repeal Obamacare in its entirety, and Mr. Mullen's going to vote to keep Obamacare.
Can you repeat that question one more time, please? Repeat the question one more time, please.
I am 64. I have pre-existing conditions. What should I expect if your party takes over the White House and Congress in November when I sign up for Medicare next July?
Medicare, I think that is a system that greatly needs to be examined. And again, I think it's one of those things where we have, as libertarians, agreed to meet our contractual obligations to those who are immediately going to be taking advantage of these programs. And I agree that we do need to repeal Obamacare in its entirety. I would do the same. But in reality, we're all putting about $30,000 into Medicare in our lifetime, and we're getting about $100,000 out of that. So that is what I would consider unsustainable spending. We need to look at options and have conversations in Washington about phasing out those systems in the long term. And those are the conversations that I would like to initiate for future generations.
Folks, my opponent said that her first bill will be a balanced budget amendment, and her first bill would be Obamacare. So which one is it? Let's stay focused. Fair enough. Listen, folks. The Republican budget right now is simply eliminating Medicare as we know it for our seniors. Putting it into a voucher program that turns the amount of money that we can spend and hits a ceiling, and by the Congressional Budget Office suggests that $6,400 per year will be on the backs of my friends, your friends, and our neighbors. That's unacceptable. Jackie Walorski suggests that she wants to change it. She's being disingenuous now, no different than when she wanted to, protect the toll road, then sell the toll road, then protect it, or selling a dodging daylight savings vote. But listen, I'm a soldier. I served overseas in some really tough conditions, the most stressful environments on earth. I understand how it feels to stand tall and strong with the wind blowing in your face. In addition, growing companies and making payroll. We need folks like that in the halls of Congress, not professional politicians.
Will you support privatizing Social Security?
I'll go back to the same thing I said regarding Social Security earlier, contractual obligations. We have contractual obligations to those who have been investing in the Social Security system for a very long time. And we need to start talking about options to make this cheaper as far as the national burden in the long run and for future generations. So I'm talking about a full opt-out for younger people like myself. As far as privatization goes, all that really asks is, should people be able to save up for their own retirements? And I think that's fair. I don't think that the government should prevent anyone from doing that. And so yes, I would be in favor of privatization in the long run once we've met our contractual obligations to those who currently need to utilize the system.
Under no circumstances will I ever risk your retirement in Social Security in the New York Stock Exchange or Wall Street. It's unacceptable. This is a major difference between Jackie and I. On Tea Party Talk Radio in 2010, she said she'd do exactly like George Bush tried to do and privatize Social Security. Taking our hard-earned dollars that we paid into day after day after day after day and looking forward to that into retirement, to sail into the sunset, and putting it into the New York Stock Exchange, that is not only risky, it's unacceptable. And in a downturn such as we just witnessed and survived through, would you have preferred to have your Social Security in the New York Stock Exchange? I wouldn't think not. We need to make sure that we have an opportunity to give these folks that have paid into it the chance to retire in dignity.
No, and I'll repeat myself again, I will not support cuts to Social Security or Medicare. And I can tell you, as my mom is sitting here on the front row, watching her sign her life away to the American government, it's very frightening and very emotional to be taking care of our aging baby boomers and understanding that they need the protection of the funds that they've invested. I can tell you that one of the ways I think that we can turn the whole thing around is by bringing revenue into this country. And the way we bring revenue into the country is we back the regulations off, we get the debt off the heads of every one of us of $50,000 with a country that's in debt $16 trillion, and we hire private employees to bring revenue into our country. I think that is the way that we turn our economy around. If we stay focused there and we focus on bringing jobs into the 2nd District and jobs into the nation, the influx of revenue will start to lift the burden of every one of these mountains that we're facing.
The next question is, what is your position as it relates to the Second Amendment, the right to own and bear arms?
If I can, Pat, I'm going to go back to a second ago. Can I go back a second ago? They're working on my partisanship as we speak. My opponent has just suggested that she will not cut Social Security. On an NPR radio show just a week ago, she couldn't answer the question when pressed. In 2010, on a Tea Party Talk Radio, she wants to privatize Social Security, and now she's dodging the question because she can't run on her own record. It's unacceptable. As far as Second Amendment rights, I'm a pro-life, I'm a Second Amendment, strong Second Amendment believer. I had a 9mm Beretta on my hip and an M4 rifle slung around my back in war. We don't want to take our guns away.
Thank you. I am as well a huge proponent of the Second Amendment. My husband and I were living overseas for 4 years in the country of Romania, where the Second Amendment wasn't present in a post-communist country. One of the first things I did when I got to the Indiana House was co-sponsor the lifetime handgun permit, and I'm proud to have done that. I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the NRA, Gun Owners of America, and our local, in northern Indiana, Second Amendment Patriot Group in our Elkhart, St. Joe County area. So I think it's a huge issue. I lived in a country where you could wake up the next morning and there could be any form of government because the only armed people were the military and the police. So I'll fight for it. I'm on record fighting for it. And for those of you that have a lifetime handgun permit, good for you.
I'm glad that I'm in good company in regards to this issue. I'm safe there. I'm also very pro-Second Amendment. I definitely believe in the right to bear arms, and I think the Constitution nailed it with that. And I think that any government who would attempt to take away an individual's means of self-protection is a government that should be feared, and as we know, the government should not be feared by its people. The government should fear its people. So I think the Second Amendment is fantastic, and I would support it 100%.
How do you plan to pick up the pieces of public education, and what kind of support will you provide for teachers?
Great question. I'm married to a public school teacher, Dean Swire. My husband is sitting right here in front of me, and he comes from a family of teachers. So Dean has 900 kids per week in the Mishawaka school system in 2 schools, in Hums and in Twin Branch. He comes from a litany of educators. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that education, is, especially K through 12, is the job of the states. It's not the job of the federal government. And we have created so many levels of bureaucracy in education. You have to fight to get the money into the classroom. The money belongs in the classroom. And it's been ruled, it's been said, and I've been a fierce proponent in the Indiana State House, that we pay our bills, that we do what we have to do to have a top-level, global, competitive K through 12 educational force in our country. And the only way we do that is to enforce and reinforce good teachers and make sure that we have the best, highest teachers that we can, and that it stays at the state level. I was not a proponent of No Child Left Behind because it wasn't funded.
There's a cultural problem right now, and I've worked with kids for the last 6 years, almost 7 years now, and I've seen them in the classroom. And I was kind of disheartened the other day because the teacher was having a conversation with some of my boys and said, "Can you tell me who the United States fought during the Revolutionary War?" The room fell silent. But they've all got iPads, and they've all got laptops, and the money is there. Money is not the problem. In terms of supporting teachers, I think that we need to create a competitive educational system. We need reform. We need to make sure that the kids who are there want to learn, and that there are options for the kids, like the kids that I work with, who are able to be taken care of in a more supportive environment. But I think creating just a better educational system, period, is the best way you can support both children and teachers, and that's what we really need to work on.
I'm extraordinarily proud to have the endorsements of the National Education Association as well as the American Federation of Teachers. Education is primarily the responsibilities of local governments, I agree, and it's how we ought to stay. However, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. My opponent has said in the past that she would like to remove and eliminate the Department of Education. And when you look under the hood and you take a moment to think about that, guess what goes with that? Pell Grants, Head Start. These are programs that make it possible for poor children in very, very low economy, low poverty areas to chase the American dream that I've tasted, that many of you and your families and friends have tasted. But if we allow that ladder of opportunity to fall, it will. And that's not what we need to do. We need to stay laser focused on our teachers, making sure that they have all the resources possible, but not to hamstring.
How do you propose to represent the people of our district in terms of federal grants and such like that, while also bringing out of control spending in check?
That's an interesting question. It's pretty loaded, actually, that question. But in regards to grants and student loans, I mean, I could easily say, hey, let's stop funding them. I don't know that that's exactly the problem. I think a bigger problem is the fact that we have, more student loans available to people in this country than we actually have credit. I think that's a problem. I think the fact that we don't teach our children not to accept what they're not going to be able to pay back is a problem. I think that the fact that we create an economic environment where a person can graduate with $90,000 in student loans and not be able to find a job afterwards, those kinds of things are the problem. So I think reestablishing a system where colleges are not having all this money funneled into them is going to be beneficial for the government in terms of spending, but it's also good in terms of what the students have available to them, because college would be a heck of a lot cheaper if it was just colleges competing for the students because they want to fill the classrooms. They would have a need as a business and as an institution to fill the seats. And so we don't need all of these things. Okay. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question again, Pat?
How do you propose to represent the people of our district in terms of federal grants and such, while also bringing out-of-control spending in check?
First and foremost, I think a member of Congress has 3 tenets of responsibilities. One is to be a representative voice for the entire spectrum. Secondly, I think we need to focus on constituent services, making sure that from VA claims to issues that folks deal with on a day-to-day basis is worked on in the federal arena. And third, I think we need to focus on having resources that aren't given to our communities by faceless bureaucrats. How to do so? By focusing on working together and getting those stuff pushed forward so we can have targeted economic development. But the only way to do so is taking a hard-earned look at how we can reduce the spending. And the only way to do so is focusing on eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in the procurement and acquisition industry. As a soldier, I commanded a number of men, and we had a huge budget. And within the procurement industry, I saw the extraordinary overspending, whether it be from Iraq to Washington to Fort Leonard Wood. We need to make sure that we eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse in the procurement industry, and we can move on to take care of our runaway deficit right now.
Thank you. I think that, one of the things that we can do with the grant program is to continue to, and make sure that we always allow private industry to keep the grants and the fees and everything along with them in a competitive private market. And I think that when you look at the out-of-control spending at the federal level, and if we do, and we diligently do what we did in Indiana, which I believe we can do at the federal level, and audit every single department, there is a vast amount of money that we will save at the federal level by shrinking down the size of the federal government, shrinking down the layers of bureaucracy. If we took the state of Indiana down to the 1970s, mid-70s system of bureaucracy, imagine what we could do at the federal level if we did the same thing. More people, more money, more programs, and obviously many more departments. But I think that, again, if we're supplying our people with jobs and allowing folks to access better work and allowing to have loans that are competitive in a private industry and a private market, I think we at least begin to turn the tide and curb the problem.
Let's get warmed up. Closing statements.
Thank you again. Thank you guys for hosting this evening, and thank you guys for all being here and having an open, civil conversation on the 2 extraordinary paths of conversation our country can take on November 6th. One is the path of what I like to think is professional politician, extreme Tea Party, or a path of moderation, a path that you want to walk down the middle of the road and try to thread a needle. I've always said that my Democratic supporters are going to be disappointed and angry at me. I say that my Republican friends and supporters are going to be angry with me. Why? Because I'm going to challenge. I'm going to talk and open up the conversation, and knowing full well that we have to have bipartisanship. And the only way to do so is by threading the needle and moving down the middle of the road. As a soldier, I did it commanding men and women. As a small business owner, I made payroll. I distribute 401k, setting up fringe and health benefit packages for my employees and their families. We need in the halls of Congress not professional politicians. We need people in the halls of Congress that know how to make a budget, that understand what it feels like to shower before and after work. But most importantly, we have to have that American flag draped around our bodies, understanding that this is for the greater good of our kids and our grandkids. As a soldier, I want to take that experience and that sacrifice to the halls of Congress. As a small business owner, I want to take that experience to the halls of Congress and stimulate the economy and reignite it for our kids and our grandkids. But the only way we can do it is bringing folks to the middle of the table in a moderation, working together. Thank you so much, and thank you guys so much for coming out here on a Thursday night. I can't wait to be your voice. It's going to be my privilege. Thank you so much.
Also, thanks again to Wabash Chamber of Commerce for bringing us out here tonight. Thank all of you for being here. What I want from you is a chance, because what you've seen tonight, and what you've seen if you've watched any of the other debates for any of the other races, is people talking about bipartisanship and all along arguing with one another, and you just know. You just get this illustration of how things are really going to be when either of those people are elected. And yet, you have Brendan calling Jackie my opponent, and Jackie calling Brendan my opponent, and not pointing out, obviously, that there's a third person in the room. And so often, we're used to it. But listen, where is the solution going to come from? Because people have often said, I'm glad you think I'm funny. That libertarian positions maybe are a little extreme, but I would invite you to consider that $16 trillion in national debt came from not a libertarian. It came from Republicans and it came from Democrats on a long enough timeline. And I don't think they are the ones who are going to fix it. So I'm saying this to you. I am the one person in this room that has a true motive to succeed. If you vote for me, and my idea is about simplified government, and I don't go to Washington and do exactly what I say I'm going to do, chances are you'll never vote for a libertarian candidate or even a third-party candidate ever again. I have more to lose in this race, and you have more to gain from a representative like me, and I wish, and I hope, and I invite you to vote for me this November.
Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. I know you have many places to be, but we consider it an honor that you're here tonight. We do have two clear paths in front of Hoosiers tonight, and we've heard it all night long. We have a path that comes down to the same type of thing we've been seeing, which is overregulation, massive debt, $50,000 debt on the head of everybody in here. And I can tell you from what we've done in the state of Indiana, I'm proud to be a Hoosier, I can tell you that we can cut taxes. We've done it in our state. We can balance the budget. We've done it. We can lead in job creation. We can loose our private companies to be able to hire. We've done it. We have a choice to make. We either stand on the side of President Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Brendan Mullen, or we decide as Hoosiers that we're going to make a change at the national level. We're going to start here in the 2nd District. We're going to start right here in Wabash. I'm excited about my background. My dad was a Air Force veteran. He was a city firefighter and a small business owner. My mom and dad worked 2 jobs their entire lives. I've been involved in our community a lifetime, member of our community. I share the same values as the folks that I live around that have lived around me. I consider it an honor to have served in the Indiana State House for 6 years and to have taken the opportunity and to stand before you tonight grateful and humble and say that we can go together. Did you say fine? Okay. We can go together to D.C. and take what we did in the state of Indiana and make it work. Thank you so much for your support.
Now we can clap.
Thank you.